and it's something that we need to make sure we have enough of in our diet over 24 hours.
If you get good at doing 5 minutes every day, that's where the magic happens. That's when things start to change.
It'll certainly make a difference to your alertness during the daytime, but you're also strengthening those circadian rhythms, which are so important for our health.
You're very passionate, aren't you, that if you fuel your body in the right way with the right foods, that can make a big difference to energy.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, Rangan, yeah. And it all starts from the food we're eating, and obviously the output is energy. And we're in January now, right? We're sitting here, we're a couple of weeks into January, and now is the prime time where we see a couple of things happening. We see people embarking on new fitness pursuits, so they're training a lot more than they ever have done. And normally also they're going on diets. And one of the things that we see at this time of year is we see people who are energy deficient, who are walking around. And this is a topic that's covered quite a lot in the sports medicine press over the last few years, called relative energy deficiency in sports. And it's something where you're expending huge amounts of energy, but not taking in enough and eating enough. And this manifests itself in lots of symptoms: decreased concentration, coordination, irritability, muscle strength, and it can have more serious side effects too. But I can definitely see in my practice at this time of year, and all the conversations, people are jumping straight into a new approach to either lose weight or look better, as opposed to setting up a sustainable approach to fuel their body to then train harder perhaps and improve their fitness. It's the wrong way around.
Yeah, no, I like that. Do you think some of us are... Do you think we are training... Well, not training too much, but we change things so suddenly that we maybe go from nothing to 2 or 3 spinning classes a week because we want to get fit and lose weight, but we're not proportionately increasing the amount of food that we eat because, you know, we're trying to lose weight, so I'm going to eat less, I'm going to work out more.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not done right, you're actually going to really suffer from low energy. Is this something you're seeing quite a lot?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% Rangan. It's something that I think people view the two sometimes in isolation. And ultimately the two go absolutely hand in hand and in synergy. And it's just about gaining an understanding of obviously training in the right amount, but fueling your body in the right way. And part of the rationale really for the book and getting the message across with energy actually came from sport a long time ago, and it came from working with combat sports athletes. And this includes people like boxers, judo players and jockeys, because they have to hit a certain weight to get on the scales. So typically what we would see is a few weeks out from competition, suddenly they really reduce their weight, so they have to hit that to get on the scales to compete. The problem that we'd see is, they can actually compete, but when it would come to perform, they had no energy.
Wow.
So the one sort of key aspect of this really for me is, look, it's no good looking great if you don't have the energy to deliver a performance. And I speak to people every day in and around London, in and around the UK, that say similar things, that the focus is so much on looking good, it's almost seen as we have to go through this period of hurting, this period of feeling hungry. It's almost a rite of passage.
This deprivation.
You have to do it. You shouldn't have to do it. It's not a trade-off. You can fuel your body in the right way with the right foods and still maintain an aesthetic you want. It shouldn't be a trade-off. And we've almost been taught it is a trade-off, I think.
For those people listening who may feel, well, you know what, James, you've worked with these high-level sportsmen who are performing on the world stage. You've dealt with CEOs and top businessmen who are looking for high performance. A lot of people may be thinking, actually, that doesn't apply to me. But I guess I would really disagree with that in the sense that we are all looking for high performance in our everyday lives, whether it's to perform well on the school run, whether it's to perform well in your relationships, whether it's to perform well when your kids are back home from school and you want to play with them and you want to do homework with them and you want to actually mentally engage with them. We all want high performance. And I think sometimes the word high performance is associated with CEOs and sportsmen. But I think we all need to be thinking about high performance.
We do. It was wonderfully put. And almost performance is a bit of a hard, scary word sometimes. And that's definitely an approach I've had, I think, early on, transferring to clients I would see on the street. They would say the same thing about how does this transfer? And performance can be a hard word, but ultimately that's what we want. A lot of us, most of the listeners and most of the people we see each day in our practices, they want to perform better in their jobs. we're now working longer hours in the UK. We have to perform better. We have to be fueled to cope with these increased demands. And it's the same with our family life as well. And all we're trying to do really is to use nutrition to give our bodies the best opportunity to achieve what we can, our own personal best.
So how do we do that? So, let's say someone's listening to this, they're interested in improving their nutrition, but they don't know where to start, and they've read conflicting blog after conflicting blog, and they've seen one person do really well on a low-fat vegan diet. They've seen somebody else do really well on, let's say, a diet low in refined and processed carbs, and they think, well, I don't know what to do. I'm confused. Are there some basics that everybody listening to this can apply?
Yeah, I think there are. I think there are definitely some rules. I think we really have to knock a few myths on the head straight away, Rangan, in that we shouldn't be following an approach that gets rid of any nutrient or food group. That isn't something that's sustainable. That isn't something we do with our elite athletes. So the highest performers on the planet don't use that approach. What we do is we use different fuels at different times, and we make this approach sustainable. And, I think firstly, if we're diving into the science a little bit more, that you're right, there's been this almost debate in the media over the last 5 years. It's really heated up in that what's the best fuel for the body? Should we be all high fat? Should we be high carb? And we're constantly wrestling. And actually, our physiology hasn't changed much over the last 20 years. We use both of those energy sources as a fuel.
Yeah.
And actually, our body at different times prefers to use different fuel sources. When we're doing lower intensity work, walking around, our body prefers to use fat as its primary fuel. As soon as we're really increasing the intensity, maybe doing a HIIT class or doing high intensity running, we tend to see more of a shift towards using carbohydrate as more of a fuel. But it uses both. And if we feed it both, that means we have a healthy metabolism.
So should you feed your body certain fuel sources at different times depending on what you're doing? For example, if you've had a busy day at work and you're going to go and do, let's say, this spinning class or a circuits class, in the evening on your way home from work, is there something that you should be doing to make sure that you can perform well in that class?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the approach with that, Rangan, as well, because we're almost going backwards from what we're fueling for, which is absolutely the right approach.
So we all need to think about when we're eating, it's not just eating, in a sort of habitual way. It's thinking about, okay, what have I got going on today? What do I need to put into my mouth to ensure that I can sustain what I need to do today? And the reason I'm asking that actually is particular because over the last few months, my wife has started to work out more, and she's started to do strength training, which is not something she's really focused on before. And I won't say too much more.
Get yourself into trouble.
I'll get myself into trouble. But essentially, she's really getting into strength training now a couple of times a week. But often she hasn't changed what her nutrition is for the rest of the day. That's something she won't eat before she works out. Sometimes straight afterwards, she won't eat. And a few hours later, she can really feel tired, can't concentrate, feel a little bit irritable. And I see that in my patients as well, because I guess in some way, they've not thought about what do I need fuel for today.
It's really well put, and we need to look at how we fuel our body over the 24 hours. And there's a couple of really important reasons for that. And just using your example with your wife and the strength training, we know that if we're doing a resistance training or strength training session, your muscles are still adapting over 24 hours later to what the workload that you put through them, which I think is quite amazing when we talk about it.
Yeah, it is.
So we almost know that in the 24 hours after you've done this training session, what you eat will have an effect on how your muscles adapt.
Wow.
So, I think for me that's really interesting.
And how they recover as well.
How they recover and how they grow and repair. And obviously the key nutrient we look for that is protein. And I've termed this in the book the maintenance fuel. And it's something that we need to make sure we have enough of in our diet over 24 hours. But also now we've learned from the science that it depends on the timing that you have the protein during the day, because our muscles are in a constant state of flux. They're constantly taking in new proteins to grow and repair and breaking down. So if we can get protein in our snacks and our meals, it just means our muscles are constantly in positive equity, really. Protein is one that's obviously grown in the public interest in recent years and is really important because we know we have to hit a certain level over 24 hours to maintain our muscle mass and to maintain growth and repair for our muscles.
So I guess working with elite athletes, I'm guessing that you have been quite specific with them in terms of how much protein they need. Do you think that, a non-elite athlete, someone who just wants to perform well all day and be able to do a workout 3 or 4 times a week, do they also, do you feel, need to, I wouldn't say obsessively, but do they really need to, measure and look at how much protein they're having, or can it be a little bit more intuitive, do you think?
It can be a bit more intuitive. I think with any of the things we're applying here, even eating for energy or your protein for maintenance, it doesn't have to be really rigid. We're not talking about weighing food.
No.
That's not the approach. Our elite athletes don't do that.
Oh, really?
We don't weigh, they don't go home and weigh their food. If there are specific examples where we need to be really prescriptive, yes, we'll do that, and we'll write a very, very specific plan. But in most cases, this is about getting the principles right with each meal.
Yeah.
And then replicating these over the day. And I think, often, Rangan, I know we were talking about this earlier on, I think often we try and overcomplicate the science. And sometimes there's really some really cool, fun science behind what we're doing. But with the people who we work with, we want it to be dead simple. So they can go into a restaurant or go down to the breakfast table in the morning and have confidence that they'll put the plates of food together. And within the book, what I've tried to do is almost use this concept of building a plate and how you build a plate depending on your demands.
So let's sort of walk through then how one builds a plate, because let's take, a middle-aged man or woman who's working, let's say. Or let's take, someone who's got a busy home life. They've, maybe they've got kids who they want to get to school, then get to work, and maybe at lunchtime they want to go and have a little workout at the gym. So I guess, how would they go about thinking about building their plate? And I guess an additional question there might be, if they've got young children, are there any of those principles that they can also apply with their kids? Yeah,
absolutely. I think I would start from the very beginning with this, Rangan, and I'd really love to lean on an example and the rationale supporting this, because in every sports ground up and down the country, and this was the same for us at Arsenal, we would have your restaurant where your players would go and eat before and after training. And typically what would happen is when they go into the restaurant, the way that we set the restaurant up was that we had the different food stations with the different components, and we could then give some information to players on how they should build their plate. Now, the first station was always protein. So the players would go in and choose their portion of protein on their plate. Now, the second section was the fuel section, looking at the slower releasing, lower GI carbohydrates. Now, this would really depend. On some days, preparing for a big session, we'd be encouraging them to have a bigger portion of the carbohydrates. But on some days, we might be encouraging them to perhaps burn more fat or another adaptation. So we would say, actually, we want you to restrict the amount of carbohydrates and then move on to the next part of the counter, which is the protection foods, which is the vegetables, fruits and fats. So actually fill your plate with more of these vegetables to complete that component.
And you call them protection foods. Why do you call them protection foods?
Protection foods to maintain tissue health, to maintain our immune system. And
because what, the antioxidants or the phytonutrients that are contained within there?
Yeah, absolutely so. And the vitamins and minerals too. Like, for example, looking at things like vitamin C, like you said, the antioxidants, folates, and the different vitamins too. And we often find that the protection foods, the vegetables and the fruits, are often things that are overlooked on people's plates. We often focus a lot on, okay, well, I've got my protein, I've got my carbohydrate, am I set? And we often restrict the variety of these protection foods that have obviously a crucial role for our immune system, but also for our tissue health too.
Yeah, I really like that. And it's really, it's fascinating for me to... it's really fascinating to think about what might happen at a big football club like Arsenal. So the players are, rocking up, they're going to eat before they train, let's say, and, you've set it out like your protein station. And then what's fascinating for me is that sometimes you'll encourage more low glycemic carbohydrate type foods.
Yes.
But on other occasions, you'll sort of restrict that.
Absolutely.
Which is really interesting because obviously about 5-10 minutes ago, you mentioned about not restricting foods. And I know this podcast has, a very loyal listenership around the world, and there's a lot of different people who listen. Some people are advocates of a vegan lifestyle. Some are advocates of a low-carb lifestyle and have found that actually if they restrict, refined and processed carbohydrates and really go quite aggressive on that, for them, they seem to find that they can thrive in their everyday lives and lose weight, whereas some people love a vegan diet and they find that that's changed their lives. And I think for me, the commonality tends to be when they've moved away from, what's called the standard Western diet to a more whole food based diet, people tend to improve, certainly initially, no matter what change they make initially. That's certainly what I found in my practice as well. Mm-hmm. And so what's fascinating for me is that sometimes your athletes who you're working with, you will change their carbohydrate intake depending on what they're doing. So what can we learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, you've summarised that really well, Rangan, in that, it really depends on what you're fueling for. It's the point you made before, right?
That's the key, I guess. So maybe it's the low-carb approach for some people in the context of the rest of their lifestyle and in the context of what they have previously done with their food intake. Maybe it works for them in their lifestyle, whereas somebody else, for example, it may not work for them. I think I really like that.
Well, it all comes down to context, right? Yeah. It all comes down to context because everyone has different demands in their day. And, just like you said, there'll be some days where I'll advise clients to have a higher protein, lower carb meal because, for example, they don't need extra fuel.
So what might be a scenario where that might be something you recommend?
So quite typically then, I mean, we're in London now, let's dive into the city.
Okay.
And that's, the typical person in the city, they might train 3 times a week. So on those days, we know that their body will need more fuel from lower glycemic index carbohydrates.
And when you say that, just in case people who are listening to this aren't familiar with those, what do you mean by that?
Oh, so things like basmati rice, wild rice, whole wheat pasta, quinoa, buckwheat, rye breads, porridge oats.
Okay.
There's a huge variety of options of these foods that we can choose. So quite broadly, we're saying, well, on a more active day where you're training more, you should have more fuel. But what happens on the day where you're going to work and one of those days where your days run away from you?
Yeah.
You haven't had a chance to go to the gym. We all have them. That's how we should be shaping our fueling accordingly. And it might be we get home in the evening and say, well, look, I actually haven't worked out today. My activity levels have been really low. Maybe it's time for me to have what we call in the book a maintenance meal, which is bringing the carbohydrates right down, having your source of protein and having your protection foods, your vegetables, but you don't need fuel if you're then going to be sitting around in the evening.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a lovely way to think about things, about fueling your body for its specific demands.
Exactly so.
And I like that. And I guess with the book, you sort of outlined different approaches that people can take. I love that. That's a maintenance meal as opposed to a performance meal?
Well, the terms we use, Rangan, we use the maintenance meal and we use our fueling meal. And then for people who have extremely high energy demands, maybe you're preparing for your first London Marathon or your first triathlon, we would use a competition meal. But most of the readers who are just trying to get a bit fitter and trying to look a bit better and feel a bit better, we alternate between the fueling meal and the maintenance meal. And then you can look at the context of your day and then your week. And then you have the tools to adjust. Because I think too often we talk about nutrition, it's almost seen as you've got a blank sheet of paper, a static plan. That's not reality. That's not the world we live in. We have to be nimble with our approach and have this approach that things may change. You might have to go and do a show tomorrow night, or work during the day. So your energy levels might be up. It's the same for the person who might put an extra training session into their week. We need the tools to be able to fuel our bodies flexibly. But before we can do that, we need to understand.
And I guess what you're trying to teach people is, yes, give them an understanding of different fuel sources and what they're going to do for the body. But I guess the hope would be over time, they would start to understand what they need for their own bodies based upon the recommendations you initially make. Because ultimately, I guess we want to get to the point where we start to understand what we need for our own bodies.
100%. I mean, I was always taught within sport that we worked and upskilled the athletes. Your work as a practitioner, you would work with the talent, with the athletes, and you would teach them about their body. Essentially, Rangan, we would coach them. It's like a coaching process. The coaches do it out on the pitch. My role really was to upskill, work with a chef to teach them how to cook, get them to understand how their body's recovered, what an optimal level of body composition was maybe for them as well. And then little by little, you take a step backwards. And you're on hand for the odd question. Hey, James, should I do this? Or my muscle soreness is up. Is there anything that can help? But the autonomy is passed then to the athlete. And it's the same process with this book. What we're trying to do is to upskill people, to take the scariness out of exercise and nutrition and say, look, here are the fuels. Here are the different plates. Try them out. See how you get on. Monitor how you're doing and you can refine it.
Yeah.
And you're on a journey.
I think on that level, it's just very empowering and simplistic approach in the sense that, you've got all that experience. You have worked with some of the most, high performing athletes in the world at the highest level. Yet we can all learn from those principles, because I guess what you're saying is actually what you're doing with them and what you would do with, let's say, me if I came in to see you, actually is not that different. It's about figuring out what are you fueling for. Let me help you do that.
Absolutely. It's absolutely the same. It's just often a different wrapper. People have different context in their lives, and you might face slightly different challenges, but the science is still the same.
Yeah.
Our body still loses nutrients in the same way.
I'll tell you one thing, just before we got recording today, I was telling you that I'm in London at the moment on a sort of book tour, and every night this week I've got events in the evening. So speaking about my book, The Stress Solution, and then I am, doing a book signing afterwards. And last year when my first book came out, I didn't have quite as many events.
Right.
And I'd be busy. I'd be quite excited about the event in the evening, because I love speaking to people, love meeting people. And I found last year what I would often do is I wouldn't get time to eat before the events because I was doing too many other things, too many interviews. And I realized that actually what I would do, I'd be okay doing the events and doing the book signing, but then I'd come back to my hotel and I'd be starving. So then I would eat late and I wouldn't sleep very well. And so I'd be exhausted the next day. And, just a simple thing that I've learned between last year and this year is now I sort of blocked out in my diary before each event a 90-minute slot where I will eat before I go.
Great.
And it's a simple thing, right? It sounds like so intuitive, and I'm sort of pretty obsessed with nutrition.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't really think about it. And having gone through that experience now, I'm now eating before all of these events. I think I'm performing better at the events because I've got a really nice, source of energy throughout the whole evening. And also I'm finding that I'm sleeping better because I'm not eating so late. So that's just one example of how I've tweaked things from last year.
And did you notice that quite quickly, Rangan, when you made that change and you said, right, look, I'm going to really focus on my nutrition before, was the difference quite quick? Did you notice?
It was actually, if I'm honest. I've been doing that maybe... I've done 3 events so far and I've got 14 to do. So I've still got a lot to do. And I've been trying before each of these new events this year. It's actually about a month ago, I sat down and I thought, actually, it's a grueling schedule in January. Right. I'm really passionate about spreading the word about what I do and trying to get around the country and talk to lots of people. But at the same time, if I don't look after myself, I'm going to struggle and I'm going to start burning out. And I reflected on what I did last year. I've also noticed, if I'm honest, James, is that I don't know if and I'd love to talk a bit about food timing.
Yeah.
I know for me, I know for many of my patients, if we eat late, it can often have a knock-on consequence in terms of our sleep, so therefore our recovery. I'm a big fan of Professor Sachin Panda's research from the Salk Institute in San Diego. He talks a lot about time-restricted eating and how we've got natural circadian rhythms, and actually eating in harmony with those can be really beneficial. Why do you ask, did I notice the effect quite quickly?
Well, because typically I'd expect you to say yes, really. And I think often there's the misconception with nutrition that you have to turn your diet upside down or your nutrition upside down to see an effect on your performance. But actually, just changing one meal and seeing how that's gone can have a massive, massive difference. We had an event a few weeks ago. This was over at the Barbican with a society of musicians. And I think within the music industry, nutrition's still in its infancy. And they were saying, look, what's the one thing that I can change to have an impact on what we do in the evening when we're performing all around the world? And it's getting your pre-performance routine nailed. And I said, okay, everyone, put your hand up if you know what you eat or what you prefer to eat before you go on stage and what time it is. How many people give that some thought? 30%.
Wow.
So just with one small intervention around what you're eating before and maybe what you're drinking if you're having caffeine, anything like that, you can have a huge impact on the most important part of your week, that performance on stage. And it's just a small tweak.
What's incredible is that when you put it like that, it's obvious, isn't it? You think, actually, you know what? I'm a musician. I need to perform now for a couple of hours in the evening. What do I need to do? What do I need to fuel my body with to ensure that I can do that? But for some reason, we don't think about it like that. This was recently, you said that was with musicians.
That's right, yeah.
One thing we spoke about before we came, to record today is I've always felt that, Premier League football seemed to be, certainly 10, 15 years ago, seemed to be a little bit behind the curve in terms of nutrition. They seem to be focusing on a lot of other things. That was my perception. Obviously, you're in it and you've been in it and probably one of the pioneers, I guess, in it in terms of working with Arsenal, because Arsenal are well known for actually, I think Arsene Wenger is very well known for sort of being slightly ahead of the game in terms of trying to introduce these ideas into the club. And it really does strike me as quite bizarre how we've not really thought about food in that way, have we? We've just sort of, we eat because we're hungry or we're not hungry. It's just a thing that we do. We've not thought about what we're going to put in for what we're doing afterwards.
It's our habits, especially in London, are based on habit. We tend to wake up in the morning, we'll have the same rushed breakfast perhaps, go to that same coffee shop for the same sandwich, finish work, perhaps scramble around the local supermarket to prepare our meals. And it's based out of habit. And one of the key things we're trying to do with the book really is just to break habits and say to people, look, this should be conscious. And we should be tailoring our nutrition. It doesn't have to be obsessive. It just requires a little bit of thought, and how by making a few simple changes to our nutrition, to our energy plan, we can, achieve a bit more and have more energy to do the things we love to do.
So weekends, a lot of us, if we have, obviously working patterns are changing a lot now, but many people still have, let's say a typical Monday to Friday office job, let's say, and they're not working at the weekends. So obviously, they might just be completely chilling and relaxing at home on a Saturday. Or, let's say, to another extreme, they might go out with their family or their partner and go, hey, we're going to go for a long walk. We're going to go out in nature, go on a little bit of a hike. So I guess a lot of us will have the same breakfast on a Saturday morning without any thoughts. But I guess what you're saying is that depending on how we're going to spend that day, that will also then... it will also influence the sort of breakfast we should be having.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it just comes back to the premise of we're fueling for the demands of that day.
So if you are having a quiet day at home, is that, and you're not going to be particularly active, is that the sort of day where you might want to have one of these sort of, protein-rich meals, which are relatively low in carbohydrates because you're not going to be expending that energy through the day, as opposed to when you're going out for a 3-hour hike, let's say, you might go, actually, I'm going to have more of these, hopefully whole food carbohydrates in the morning with my breakfast. Is that the sort of thing you're getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we're around the house each day, I think more of these maintenance meals, the higher protein, lower fuel type of meals would definitely fit. And then we know that if we're going to go out for a big walk with the family, or we're doing a couple of exercise classes or on the golf course, we need to add more fuel. So we might have a couple of fueling meals in our day to help support that as well.
Like you, I don't believe that you can be healthy by just focusing on one area of your health, right? And at this time of year, it's very typical that someone will go, right, okay, I'm going into the new year and I'm going to change my diet this year. And I'm going to do something this January that I've never done before. I'm going to get a new diet plan. I'm going to stick to it. And it's going to change my life, right?
Heard that before.
You've heard that before? And, I've probably been guilty of that myself before, right? I think it's a very common human trait to do that. But it very much feeds into that all or nothing approach, which I'm trying to move people away from. But if we take diet, for example, sugar, or the other one you could talk about as alcohol, right? At this time of year, people are trying to reduce their sugar intake. They're trying to reduce how much alcohol they're consuming. And often, first 2 weeks of January, they'll go completely cold turkey, right? No sugar, no alcohol, right? And for a week or two, they manage to do that. And they're feeling good. They're feeling, they're sleeping better. They've got more energy. They can concentrate for longer. But then 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, it just slowly starts to slip back. And by the end of January, they're right back to where they started. Because maybe the diet or the alcohol wasn't the problem. Maybe they were the way that they coped with the stress that was in their life. Let's say there was a lot of work stress or family stress, right? Well, actually, a bit of sugar in the evening helps kind of numb that a little bit and helps soothe it.
It's a sticking plaster, isn't it?
Sticking plaster, right? And it's same with a glass of wine often. And I found, and I'd be interested in your view on this, because you've got more experience than me as a doctor. What is it now? 22, 23 years working?
God, I don't know, actually, a long time.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, and the point is that you've got to really understand what that is serving for that patient. It's no good saying, hey, you're eating too much sugar, you have to reduce it, right? Well, if we don't understand why they're choosing to do that in the first place, is it a psychological reason? Is it conditioning? Is it they don't know? Is it an education issue that they don't know how harmful it is? Or is it a way to soothe the stress in their life? Actually, depending on which one of those things it is, that will also alter the approach you take. Simply saying you've got to reduce your sugar without understanding why they're doing that. You know what? I just haven't found it to be that useful in the long term. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah,
on
no,
that?
I totally agree. I mean, I think behavior change is the key to this, and understanding what makes you tick. And I think reading through your book, that falls out of this, because people will think, wait a second, that is why I'm craving sugar at this time of day, because whatever, I'm stressed, or they've had sugary snacks earlier in the day and they're crashing, or they're reliant on caffeine, whatever. Yeah.
And that's why I put so many case studies in the book, to bring these ideas to life and say, look, well, when I saw this patient, and I'm really hoping that people, and I know the people who've read the early copies love the case stories, because
they're great, really good.
People can really often see themselves in those various stories and go, oh, actually, that might be me.
Yeah.
But in terms of what an 80-year-old can get from it, if they want more energy, right, this book can give them that. If they want more creativity, this book can give them that. If they want to lose excess weight that they feel they might be carrying, this book will help them do that.
Yeah.
And why is that? That's because I've looked at health in a rounded 360-degree fashion. So we've just said we can't look at one thing in isolation if we're going to make long-term change. And I was thinking, okay, I had this idea for 5 minutes, because I've seen over and over again that 5-minute chunks of health are achievable and people can do them repeatedly in the long term. And I'll give you a couple of stories of where that came from. In fact, I'll tell you now, actually. It's a funny dynamic actually chatting to you on this show, because you are one of my best mates, and it's
great.
It's hard to get out of I should be interviewing you. You kind of, I guess we are just having a chat, aren't we, and catching up.
Yeah.
But the 5 minutes, right? It's come from a lot of experience, but also research. So the experience is, and there's many patients I could bring up here, but there's one in particular I always remember. A 42-year-old chap who came in to see me, 7 years ago, maybe now. Can't quite remember exactly when it was, but he was a little bit overweight, struggling with energy, struggling with his mood. A very typical patient that you might see in general practice. I chatted to him for a while, and I felt that his lifestyle was probably contributing in a huge part to the way he was feeling, but I don't think he was quite aware of what he was doing that was contributing, and also what he could do about it. So we went through a variety of different things. And at the end of it, he really seemed to enjoy and resonate with what I said about strength training. He said, I'm in, doc, strength training. I'm going to do it. I can see all the benefits for it. And what would you like me to do? 40 minutes, 3 times a week at the gym. And I said, hey, look, that would be absolutely amazing if you can do that. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to do it. And he walks out of the surgery. He's feeling good. He's got a smile on his face, and he's full of motivation, right? He comes back a month later at the follow-up, and he walks in, and I said, hey, look, so how are you getting on? And his body language changes. He becomes a bit sunken, his shoulders rolling, and he looks a bit sheepish, and he says, hey, doc, I've not actually managed to go yet, because work's been really busy. The gym's quite far away from work and my house. It's quite expensive, so I've just not done it yet. And I remember thinking, I didn't think, why is he not doing what I've asked him to do? I thought, Rangan, you've clearly not given him advice that he feels is relevant in the context of his own life. And, I took my jacket off and I said, right, I'm going to teach you a strength workout right now where you don't need to join the gym. You don't need to buy any equipment and you don't even need to get changed. He's like, okay. So I went through it with him. I taught him these 5 moves.
Yeah. The kitchen workout.
It was right. There's a series of one. I mean, that one was a combo.
I do that one.
Well, there's a new one in the book called the Classic 5, which I think are the best 5 bodyweight exercises that one can do without any equipment. And I went through about 50 exercises to come up with those 5. What was interesting is that I said to him then, what I'd like you to do is do this 5-minute workout twice a week in your kitchen. And he's like, what? 5 minutes twice? Well, like 10 minutes a week. I said, yeah, can you do that? He goes, yeah, of course I can do that. I said, okay, fine. I'll see you in a month. So he goes out, like probably a bit bemused that I told him to only do 5 minutes twice a week. A month later, he comes back and I say, hey, look, how are you getting on? And he said, Doc, I've got to tell you, right? And his body language was different, right? His chest is out. He's standing up straight, right? There's a sort of smile on his face, complete contrast to the month before when he comes back to see me. And he says, Dr. Chatterjee, I love it. I started off doing it 5 minutes twice a week, like you told me to. But you know what? I really like it. I love doing it. So now I do it for 10 minutes every evening before my evening meal, right? So this chap now, and he's been doing that for a number of years now, at least 4 or 5 years after that, he was still doing it. So this guy now does 70 minutes of strength training every week, when before he couldn't manage it. And there's a few little keys in there for me, which is when you make things simple for people and easy, right? They start doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And once they start doing it for a few days, what happens? You start to feel good about yourself, right? It's behavior change on so many levels. It's actually identity change because now he's not the kind of person who can't do a health plan. He's the kind of person now who can do a health plan.
Yeah.
Because I said 5 minutes twice a week and he's done that.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, hold on a minute. And then he increases it in himself, not because I asked him to, right? But because he wants to. And that's another key point for people is that nobody in the long term will ever do something because somebody else told them to do so. Right? They might do for a week or 2 weeks, but long term, you're only going to continue doing something if you've got some degree of ownership on it. And that's one of the examples from patients where this whole 5-minute idea was born, because I've seen it work over and over again.
And the fact that he was doing more than you'd initially asked him, you mentioned something called the ripple effect in the book, which we'll come on to. But I'm going to make a confession. I know that works because while you were writing this, you asked me and one of your other friends to try it for 2 weeks. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
And I tried it and I noticed I felt less tired and a lot stronger. And it was simple stuff that you do on the floor. I remember I don't know whether I'm allowed to share this, but you sent a video of yourself doing these exercises.
I probably won't share that video on my social media channels, but I sent you and our buddy the video.
But it was great. It really worked, you know.
You text me a few weeks after doing that. You said about your shoulder pain.
Yeah, had gone.
That you'd had for years.
That's right. By doing the reverse fly, which is in this book.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you know, we mentioned one of our other friends who I won't mention the name in case they don't want to be named.
We know who he is.
We know who he is. But I saw him this summer at the beach in Devon. So he was there with his wife and kids. I was there with my family. And it was a beautiful sunny day. And
you didn't have one of your races, did you?
We didn't have one of our races, no. But he was out there on the beach, and I've known this guy for a long, long time. And actually, I thought, you know, physically he looked really, really good. And I said, "Hey, mate, what have you been doing? You look in great shape." And he turned around to me. He said, "Mate, all I've been doing is your classic 5 workouts for 5 minutes every day before I leave work." And he'd been doing that for about 2 months, right? So I knew our friend really, really well. And just by doing 5 minutes a day, every day before he left work, of a body weight strength workout that requires no equipment, I could visibly tell a change in his physique. Amazing. Now, look, the book is not necessarily about a physical appearance. No. It's about feeling good on the inside. It's about helping your physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being. It's about long-term health and longevity. That's what this book is about. But look, let's be honest, a lot of us like to look a bit better physically as well. And I'm just sharing that because a lot of people would say to get that sort of physique, you'd have to go to the gym for an hour 4 times a week, but it's simply not true. We overly estimate how much we need. We sort of overly focus on those big unattainable goals, and we forget that it's about getting really good at doing the little things, right? 5 minutes a day on that strength workouts changed his physique. But not only that, so this guy's a good runner and he cycles regularly to work, right? What else has he reported? He says, well, as you want to know, he says that when he cycles to work, he used to have to stop halfway up because he was cycling up a hill, but now he can go the whole way, right? Because the exercises are working on his legs. He's a very good runner. He's now running faster and for longer since doing it. So, I'm just using that as an example to show that this program and this plan is for everyone. Now, it doesn't just focus on the body, right? There are 3 sections to the book.
Yeah, I was just going to come on to that. So it's mind, body, and heart. Tell us a bit about how you came up with that, because I think that just in terms of getting inside your head, why is it those 3?
Okay, so just to rewind back to when I sat down to write this book, I was thinking, okay, I'm really, really happy with the first 2 books. I'm really, really happy with how many people have bought them and are using them to improve their health and their family's health. But I thought, well, there's a lot of people out there who probably aren't familiar with my work or this kind of approach to health. So how do you make it more accessible to more people? And I was thinking, what is the biggest problem that people tell me when they come and see me in my GP practice? And as we mentioned before, it's time, right? People don't feel as though they've got time. Yeah. So I thought, okay, so how can I help them understand that they do have time? And I thought about every patient that I've seen and what works and what doesn't work. And it's really consistently, it's about when you make things practical for people, not just practical in terms of time, practical in terms of how easy it is to do something. We'll come on to that later, no doubt. Then people actually make the changes. And before you know it, they're feeling good and they're empowered to keep going. So I knew I wanted to do it around 5 minutes because 5 minutes it's short enough of a time periods where you think, yeah, I've got 5 minutes to do this, but it's also long enough where you actually feel a benefit. And I think it's trying to get that balance, because the only way you're going to keep doing something is when you feel the benefits. Yeah. And so I think it's in that sweet spot from what works with people. Yeah. You can go lower than that and you can still create habits if you do start with 1 minute interventions. You really can. Yeah. But for some people, especially when you're trying to write a book that's going to appeal to a lot of people, I think 5 minutes is the right amount of time for those reasons. But then I also was thinking, okay, I like the idea of 5 minutes because I've seen that work with patients, but then how do you get that sort of rounded health approach with 5 minute intervals? Because as we've already mentioned, I don't want to just focus on one area. If you just do 5 minute workouts every day, sure, that'll improve your health, but there's other issues going on. And I thought there's issues with our mental health, our physical health, and our emotional health, right? So how can I really simplify that down to help people? And mind is all about doing something each day for 5 minutes that helps you to nourish your mind. We're being bombarded in the 21st century with messages, with emails, with things to do, with overload that's frankly overpowering and overwhelming our minds. And that is a huge driver behind our stress levels and the mental health problems that exist. So I thought, okay, so I kind of feel all of us need 5 minutes on our mind each day. Then I thought, okay, well, we know we need to move more, right? Now, movement can be many different things to many different people. But I thought, okay, so 5 minute movements also works super, super well. And that's really important. Everyone's trying to move more than they already do. But again, a lot of people think they have to go to the gym, right? And it's just simply not true. And I'd say to a lot of people, joining a gym is probably the worst thing they can do. Honestly. Yeah,
it's a waste of money for a lot of people.
For most people, it is. And actually, if you talk to a lot of gym managers, here's the sad truth about this, is if everyone who joined the gym actually went to the gym, you wouldn't be able to get in.
I've heard the same. Yeah,
it would be twofold to get in. It relies, the whole model relies on people not going. Right. So the body is all about 5-minute movements, and every day we should do a 5-minute movement. And I've given people options, whether it's a strength workout, a high intensity interval workout, a yoga flow, a dancing workout, skipping, a playful workout, something to work on your posture. There are so many options there, but the beauty of all of them is they all take 5 minutes max. And for all of them, you don't need any equipment, right? You don't need to join a gym. You don't even need to get changed.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the body section. But then I thought, because I got mind and body sorted first, but I thought there's still something missing here, right? That is not complete health. And I was thinking about what is that other component that is vital for health. And this is the final part of the book. And I actually think it's the most important part of the book. And I say that in the book. I actually say, you may be skeptical about this section, but it is the most important section. It's what I've called heart.
I know exactly what you mean, because when I read it, it's woolly and nebulous in comparison to the first two parts and much harder to define, isn't it? But I'm interested to hear what you're going to say, because I kind of agree with you, but I couldn't justify why. So it would be great to hear your view on it.
Yeah. Well, what is heart? Hearts, look, you're a medical student, I was a medical student, right? So we learned about the heart at medical school. But what we learned about it was that the heart is a physical organ, right? And it pumps blood around the body, and that's its job. Now, that's one meaning of heart. But what about the other meaning of heart that poets and artists have been waxing lyrical about for years, right? That's got a slightly different meaning. That's about connection, right? That's about connection with other people, the world around us, our friends, our work colleagues, our partners, our children, but also connection with ourselves. And the reason I think it's more important than any of the other sections is I've found over and over again, when you get that heart piece right, when you get that connection right, mind and body sort of take care of themselves. But when we don't have that connection, we seek to find it or to compensate for it with a lot of our behaviors, whether that's sugar, whether it's alcohol, whether it's mindlessly scrolling Instagram in the evening. Whatever it is, often I've realized, and it's taken me a long time to realize this and seeing a lot of patients, but often that is the drive. And we are living in a society devoid of connection. We're ultra connected in so many ways, but that's electronic connection. And that's not the same as human, meaningful connection. And, I put some stats in the book, right? The feeling of being lonely is very harmful for our health. If you feel lonely, you're 50% more likely to die earlier than someone who doesn't. You're 30% more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke than someone who's not. The feeling of being lonely is thought to be as harmful for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah, that's the study I've seen. Yeah.
So we can't ignore that. We can't actually go, oh yeah, we've seen all that, but actually, how can I write a health book that I want to help every single person who reads it and their family and their community? How can I write that and not cover this? If for me, it would be an incomplete health plan to do that. And the reality is there's many great health books out there, but one of the things I see over and over again is they a lot of them just focus on one area. And I understand that. And if I was writing books 10 years ago, I might focus on one area. But 20 years of clinical experience teaches me otherwise, in that you have to look at the whole picture before you get that response. So it's mind, it's body, and it's heart. And there's a lot of 5-minute health ops. I call them health snacks in the book. They're not literally snacks, although one of them is. They're 5-minute health snacks, and there's a lot of 5-minute heart snacks. And these are little 5-minute things that you can do, often in the evening, whether it's gratitude, whether it's sort of journaling practice. One of my favorites, and the one I try and do most evenings, is something that I call the tea ritual. And the tea ritual is something, as I say, I use for myself, but I also use with many of my patients. And it's really, really simple. The idea is that our relationships are under strain these days. Look at the divorce rates. They're going through the roof. You look, I'm sure in your friend circle and just talking to patients, would you agree? Everyone's struggling with their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the connection. I mean, it's harder, I think, to connect because of society. And I think, just on a tangent, what your book and what your work does very cleverly is it's like a wobble board on a wobble board on a wobble board. You've got these societal factors, you've got health and illness, but what goes through the middle of them in the work that you're doing is actually feeling better and living more. But you've cleverly done it through these 5-minute chunks. It's, and you're giving people so many options. Because one of the things I find is people come in and they go, should I eat more turmeric? Do I need iron? Do I need to join a gym? And they're overwhelmed. Whereas actually, it doesn't matter, is what you're saying in a way.
I'm saying it doesn't matter a little bit. Yeah. For most people, it doesn't matter. All that information and all that indecision about what we should do,
it's paralyzing, isn't it?
It is. It's a reason not to do anything. We're paralyzed by choice. So we end up doing nothing. And, that's the whole behavior change piece, which let's talk about that a little bit later. But
that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to connect, because your brain is just full of information. So you're distracted and you're not present.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem.
I think that's the main part of the problem. I think even when we've got those golden moments with the people that mean the world to us.
You're filming it.
Yeah.
Not me, but a lot of people do, don't they?
Yeah, you're filming it. And again, look, just to be clear, we're not having a go at anyone who's doing that, right?
I've done it, I do it. So,
exactly. We're just reflecting what's going on. We're, all of us, pretty much, at times, we're with the people we love or the people we really care for. Physically, we're there, but emotionally, we're not. Mentally, we could be a million miles away because we're thinking about our Instagram feed, or we're also sort of half reading emails at the same time. And you know what it's like. So what is the tea ritual? Well, the tea ritual is 5 minutes where you connect each day with somebody who's close to you. Now, for me, because I'm married, and I find that because we've got 2 young kids and I'm busy and my wife's busy, often days could go by and we were like passing ships. You get up, you're nodding your heads, right?
Co-workers, I used to call it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people,
isn't it?
It is, but a lot of people will resonate with that and connect with that. And I have found that by having 5 minutes every day of connection time, it has transformed our relationship. So the way it works in my house is when the kids are in bed and we've cleaned up the kitchen, which again is something we've been trying hard to do, so it doesn't when it come down to the plates in the morning.
Nice job, is it?
No, so we do that generally together. And then before we do anything else, before we go on our devices or, whatever the things that we want to do in the evening individually are, for 5 minutes, we'll have a little tea ritual. We've got a nice teapot, put the kettle on. We have mint tea in the evening.
I was going to ask you, what's your favourite tea?
Yeah, it's fresh mint tea.
Yeah,
for a number of reasons. A, it doesn't have caffeine in. B, I love it. It's tasty. C, it's really, really cheap. You just buy mint leaves and pop it in.
Yeah.
It's cheaper than buying herbal teas.
It's really good, isn't it? Yeah.
And so we'll sit there and we won't have devices. And for 5 minutes, we sit there and just ask each other about each other's days. Right? Now listen, Ian, I get it. It sounds so simple. 15, 20 years ago, I don't think you needed to have tea rituals. Right? But what does that do? Just that 5 minutes of connection each day, you feel closer. You feel more connected. You're more loving towards each other. You start to feel that you care more for your partner in a way that you've always cared, but it's easy to take people for granted when you're just busy all the time. And I've used that with my patients. If you haven't, I'd recommend you do it because it is so many patients come back to me and say, Dr. Chatterjee, that has transformed my relationship. And that's just one example. There's loads and loads of examples. And why I'm so passionate about this book, Ian, is because I'm just sort of giving you a few examples. There's over 50, I think, examples of 5-minute health snacks in the book, right? But all you've got to do is choose 3. One from mind, one from body, and one from heart.
That's the other genius.
That is it. That's all you have to do. You don't need, the choice will not paralyze you.
It's great. I mean, and that's the thing that surprised me, because I was reading through the health snacks, but then you keep reiterating you only need to pick 3. But the menu's enormous, isn't it? I mean, the variety. I mean, even your most pernickety person would find something for them in there. That's the great thing.
I mean, I would be surprised if somebody can read this book and actually go, no, actually, none of this applies to me.
Yeah,
because I've always said, even in my first 2 books, I've said to people when I go around the country and I give talks and I talk to the public, I say, if there's a recommendation I've made that you don't like, don't do it. People are shocked when I say that. And I'm like, no, don't do it. There's loads of options in these books.
Yeah.
choose the ones that do speak to you. Because if you try, and maybe we can sort of talk about behavior change, because this really plays into that. We know long term, you're only going to stick to doing a behavior if you like doing it. Right? It's very, very rare that people manage to stick to things long term that they don't like. So I'm saying choose one that you like, choose one that speaks to you and actually makes your heart sing as you're reading it. Do that one.
Yeah.
If there's one that you hear me talk about or you read about and you like all the health benefits and you think it might work, but you think, oh, I'm not really sure that's for me, don't do it. Pick another one. There's so many choices. But when you've picked, stick to the same ones every day. And why is that? That's to do with how you create a new habit. Right. So I use an analogy in the book of toothbrushing. Right. So most of us, I think, brush our teeth for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening. So 4 minutes a day. Now, we're not doing that anymore because our parents told us to do it. We're doing it as a habit. It's a routine.
It's become ingrained.
It's just ingrained. It's just what you do. And I know that these 5-minute health stats can also become ingrained in exactly the same way if you follow the rules of behavior change, right? But unfortunately, we don't follow the rules of behavior change. Unfortunately, look, here's the reality. You could buy, at this time of year, any health book off the shelf, right? Any one. And if you follow it for 2 weeks, you'll feel better. You will. It doesn't matter what the diet plan is, if I'm honest, right? If you follow it, or the movement plan or whatever, if you manage to stick to it, most of them are going to work.
You talk about making it stick, don't you? That's what you're talking about now. Yeah.
Exactly what I'm talking about. And there's every few chapters, I've got this theme throughout the book called Making It Stick. And there are these 1 pages where I teach people, how do you make this new health stack that you may like, how do you make it stick in your life?
Yeah.
And I give them, make it very actionable, but it all comes from behavior change science. And one of the ways you do it, I've already mentioned about making it easy, right? But it's going back to these health books that will work. Anything can work for 2 weeks, but what I'm interested in, and what you're interested in as doctor, is what's going to still be working in 2 months, in 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? What's going to stop and break this cycle of this new year, new you market every January, right? Where suddenly everyone's buying health and wellbeing books, and then by February, they're sort of on the shelf somewhere, after not doing them. Right? I very much hope mine don't fall into that category. I try my best for them not to. And judging from the comments I get and the emails and the messages, I think people are using my books throughout the year, which feels amazing to me. But I really do think this is the most practical of the lot. And for someone who's really struggling, this is probably one of the most effective health plans I think that they're going to be able to do. So when we talk about behavior change, right, you got to make it easy. Right. And let me just draw a contrast or a comparison with Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. So, Amazon, big business, I don't know, probably one of the world's biggest businesses, I'm guessing, in terms of turnover. Now, when Amazon moved to one-click ordering a few years ago, estimates say, right, that their profits went up by, I think, $200 to $300 million a year. Right. So why is that? Well, that's because in the past, you had to check your order, go to the next page, confirm that you're happy with it, the next page, type in your credit card details, and then for the final time, check again. So maybe 3 or 4 steps before you placed your order.
It's too hard.
Now, before you've even blinked, it says your order will arrive tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right?
Buy it now. I think
yeah. So the point is, for all of us, our behavior is constantly being changed, whether we think it is or not, by marketing, by media, by Amazon, by Netflix. Right? Netflix roll one, episode into the next episode. Yeah. Why? Because it's before you know it, you've started watching the second one. Every time you put an obstacle in the way, it's a reason to say no. If you had to get up from your sofa, go there, switch something on the DVD player or something, you might be thinking, you know what? Maybe I'll go to bed now. But before you know it, you've started watching again, right? And I'm not, look, Amazon are doing what they need to do as a business. Netflix are doing what they need to do as a business. But I'm saying we can use those same tools that businesses use to get you to buy more of their products. We can use the same tools to help us with our health, right? And if you make something easy, you will do it. And that's why, if we talk about those 5-minute workouts, for example, that's why every single workout in the book, whether it's a yoga one, whether it's a strength one, whether it's an interval one, requires no equipment, right? You don't need to get any equipment. You don't need to get changed. You don't need to go to a gym to make it as simple as possible. Like that patient I told you about right at the start, that's why he did it, because there wasn't a reason really to say no. And so I'm trying to help people say, look, I understand behavioral science. I've studied it. I've gone and studied with one of the world's leading experts, BJ Fogg, right? And he's had a look at this. And it was a beautiful meeting actually when I met BJ, because he looked at it and I'm really delighted that he loved it. But he said, what's really interesting for me, Rangan, is that you've got 20 years clinical experience, and your clinical experience has come to the same conclusion as my 20 years of research. And it was really nice.
I mean, he's the only name I know in behavior change, actually. And actually, there's a quote about your book from him that I've got here, which is high praise indeed. So this is what BJ Fogg says about Feel Better in 5. It says, a superb guide to making lasting change in your life, and one of the best habit change programs I've ever seen. Deceptively simple, but remarkably effective. How does that make you feel?
You know, I've looked up to BJ and his work for years, and I know that he is the world's leading expert in human behavior. A lot of the books that people buy on habit change, whether it's Nir Eyal or James Clear, these guys have all gone and studied with BJ. You know, Instagram, I think, was founded in his Stanford class. You know, he set his students a challenge I think he said that photo sharing is going to be big in the future. And so I want you guys to create an idea and an app that utilizes that. And he's got the mark sheet that he gave to Instagram. And I think he gave it high commendation. I think he said something like, it's got a very high chance of success, this.
He was right.
he was right. And so to have that sort of praise from him, of course, it's very humbling. It's, you know, of course, on a personal level, it makes me feel good. You know, it's nice to hear that. But it also it almost reinforces my belief that this is one of the most effective health programs out there, right? It really is. And it's deceptively simple. I think he's nailed it. It is deceptively simple, right? You might think 5 minutes. Come on, you know, it's got to be harder than that. It's not. If you get good at doing 5 minutes every day, that's where the magic happens. That's when things start to change, right? And it's, you know, if every single person in this country adopted the Feel Better in 5 program. So basically spent 5 minutes each day on their mind, 5 minutes on their body, and 5 minutes on their heart. I guarantee we would have a healthier and a happier society.
Our biology is kind of set up to work with this 24-hour cycle of light and darkness. And if you mess with that, things start to happen to these circadian rhythms, so these 24-hour fluctuations in our biology. So if you're exposed to light at night, one thing that does is it pushes your circadian rhythms later. That's not necessarily a bad thing unless you have to wake up to go to work or school the next morning. And if you're kind of seeing light late at night and your circadian rhythms are being pushed later, that means the time when you feel sleepy and want to go to sleep is pushed later. So you potentially get less sleep. And if you get less sleep, that's going to have an impact on your alertness, on your mental functioning, on your mood. But it's more than that, because bright light is also a kind of brain stimulant. It boosts your alertness. So if you see light late at night, you're going to feel more awake. But also, if you don't see light in the daytime, you're going to feel more sluggish and less alert. And there are increasingly studies showing that bright light it literally wakes us up. So, you know, we now spend 90% of our daytimes indoors, where the light levels are like an order of magnitude lower than they are outdoors. Today is kind of grey and rainy and gloomy. Luminance or brightness is measured in this unit called lux. And on a day like today, it's about 5,000 lux outside. On a bright, sunny day in the middle of summer, it could be as high as 100,000 lux outside. But indoors, in the kind of standard office, it might be 200 to 300 lux. So it's, you know, it's hugely dimmer inside than it is outside.
So even on a cloudy day, we have evolved to actually have at least 5,000-10,000 lux of light exposure to our, you know, through our eyes into our body. Yet for many of us living these 90% indoor lifestyles now, we might be getting only 200-300 lux. So what is the implication of that? What does that mean for us?
Well, okay, so light can influence the timing of those circadian rhythms. It can also influence the amplitude of those rhythms. So how kind of high the peaks are and low the troughs are. So what you see in people who don't get outside much, and particularly this has been studied in hospital patients and people as they age, so elderly patients in care homes, their circadian rhythms kind of flatten. So there's less difference between nighttime and daytime in their biology. And that is linked to poorer health. So things like depression, increased risk of dementia, that sort of thing.
It's incredible to think about this because, I think about, from what you just said, I think about my mother, and mum lives by herself now, and she's become a lot more immobile. So she'll spend a lot of time inside most of the day. And, she also loves this iPad that I got her a few years ago. And so not only is she not exposing herself to this bright natural light in the day, often in the evening, she's exposing herself to bright artificial light, which again, in many ways is sort of doing the Las Vegas thing on herself, right? It's almost flipping what we should be doing. And the thing I've spent a lot of time thinking about over the last few years, and it was really magnified when I was reading your book, is when we talk about health, the popular media narrative around health always revolves around food and movement. And I've been quite keen to sort of expand that out to include sleep and stress as well. But I think there's a really strong case that actually light and our light exposure is another core pillar of health that maybe we have not been thinking enough about.
Yes, I think it is. And our light exposure also plays into those things, especially the kind of movement side of things and stress, actually, because, if you, in my book, I kind of strongly advocate for very small changes to your life, but basically it involves kind of brightening your daytime and darkening your evenings and night times. But one brilliant way to brighten your daytime is just to get outside. Do a little bit of exercise, get up from your desk. If you start cycling to work or walking to work, even getting off the bus or train a stop earlier and just doing that like last 10 minutes walking, you're getting exercise. You're also out in nature, hopefully, and that's a kind of stress buster. And, there's increasing evidence that spending all day just sitting down, just not getting up and down, again, is really harmful to our health. And again, if you're just making little efforts to just get up, just go for a walk around the block at lunchtime or, on your breaks, I think that can make a difference. It'll certainly make a difference to your alertness during the daytime, but you're also strengthening those circadian rhythms, which are so important for our health.
Absolutely. I mean, you say you would imagine, but I use this as one of the tips I give my patients in practice. And it's something I wrote about in my first book. And there was a chapter called Embrace Morning Light. And it was in the sleep section. And the whole point was to say, when we talk about sleep, we're often thinking about what we do in that hour and a half before bed. And of course, that can be incredibly important. But we forget about what we do in the morning. And I remember when I've heard this from patients, but I also got quite a few messages on Twitter from people after they read Embrace Morning Light in the 4-pillar plan. They said, I've not been sleeping for years very well, and I now go for a 20-minute walk outside in the morning, and my sleep's got better. So although there are other things that could be playing a role, it really is that powerful. Getting outside in the morning is really, really powerful, isn't it, for setting that circadian rhythm? And I think you had some, let me see if I've got it here in your book. I've actually scribbled all over your book. I hope you don't mind. So it's because there's so many great things to talk about.
That's fine. I do lots of book scribbling.
And you talked about this German study that suggested that exposure to bright light in the morning boosted people's reaction speeds and maintained them at a higher level throughout the day, even after that bright light was switched off.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned another study when exposure to bright morning lights, basically those who were exposed to it between 8 a.m. and noon, it took them an average of 18 minutes to fall asleep at night compared to 45 minutes in the low light exposure group. So this is not just, hey, a bit of light in the day. This is actually changing our biology.
There's actually another study that I cite in the book. It's a lab-based study, and it showed that if you expose people to bright light during the daytime, they sleep better the following night. They get more deep sleep, and they get less fragmented sleep. And if they do wake up in the night, they feel less tired the next morning, even though they've been waking up at night. So I think it improves the quality of your sleep. But then there's the mood side of things as well. We know that larks, so people who tend to be early birds, wake up early, want to go to sleep earlier at night, tend to be less prone to depression and mental illness. And actually there's lots of other health advantages to being a lark. But possibly some of this is because they're, if you're exposed to bright morning light, it pulls your circadian rhythms earlier. So even if you're a night owl, if you see lots of bright early morning light, your circadian rhythms are shifted earlier. And I think why that's important for mood is that mood has a 24-hour rhythm, like sleep and like all these other things. And your lowest point of mood tends to be around 4 a.m., 4:30, 5 a.m., before you wake up usually. And then you're kind of going up this slope and getting happier and happier during the daytime. If you shift your circadian rhythms earlier and then you wake up at, say, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., you're already quite a long way up that slope towards a happier mood. But if you're kind of shifted later, if you're kind of like a night owl, or you're making yourself a night owl by your light exposure, when you wake up, you're going to be closer towards that trough of low mood.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I think let's explore chronotypes, because I think that's super fascinating for people, this idea of morning larks and night owls. As you were describing that, I sort of wondered to myself, is it that night owls are more prone to low mood because of their biology, or is it because modern society is set up in a way that that basically is preferential to be a lark, right? I am a lark. I'm an early bird. I like getting up early. I'm a total morning person. So, I can get up and sort of, get hold of the day. And by lunchtime, I've done loads and loads of work and I feel great. Whereas I've got friends and family who don't really operate like that. And, do you feel that if you don't have that chronotype, you are at a disadvantage in the way the world is set up?
Yes, I absolutely do. And teenagers are a really classic example of that, because teenagers naturally shift their circadian rhythms later. They can't help it. This is just something that happens at adolescence. So asking a teenager to get up at 7 a.m. to get ready for school is like asking you or I to get up at 5 a.m. And there's no reason. It's no surprise they feel kind of groggy and cross when they get up in the morning.
It's funny you say that, actually, because it's what we're recording this at the start of September, so schools have just gone back, and my nephew actually has just moved to secondary school. And after I dropped the kids off at school this morning, I saw him at his new bus stop, because he's got to get like a 30-minute bus to his secondary school, and he was half asleep and he was yawning. Now, he's only 11 or 12 years old, so he's not quite a teenager, but I thought, if this was to continue for a few years, I mean, is that the best way to start off a teenager in their school day? Are schools adapting to this research? Are they evolving to this?
Very, very slowly. So in the UK, we're relatively lucky, actually, on international terms, or our teenagers are relatively lucky, because in the US, on the continent, schools typically start a lot earlier. Some schools in the US, at least they used to, start at sort of 8 a.m., 7:30 a.m., some of them. And there have been a number of studies now in the US looking at what happens if you shift the school starting time a bit later, more like 8:30 or 9 a.m., which is what happens in the UK. And it has a really big impact on their absenteeism and on their grades as well, actually. There's been less research on this in the UK because schools here start more like 8:30 or 9 a.m. But certainly there are some schools that are starting to take this seriously. There's a private school in London which is allowing its sixth formers to start at, I think, 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. and do all their learning in the afternoons and early evenings. But there was a study of a secondary school in the UK which changed its start time to 10 a.m. And again, you saw this drop in absenteeism. So kids were less likely to be kind of coming in or not going to school because they were sick. But also their GCSE grades increased following this change. They've now changed back. I'm not sure why they changed back, but they changed back and then they saw a dip again.
It's fascinating that, because on one level, society would probably deem late starters a bit lazy, a bit.
Yes, and actually, but there has been a study that has shown that if you have an early bird manager and you're a night owl, they will judge your performance as worse than if you have a fellow employee who is an early bird. Because what that manager is seeing, that manager kind of comes to work like you, all cheerful and like, oh, I'm raring to go at like 9 a.m. And then they're kind of night owl employees come in and they kind of sit there and they need several coffees to wake up. Maybe they don't get going until the early afternoon or even the evening. And that early bird manager has gone home and they don't see that night owl like really, really doing their best work in the evenings. And there's another thing actually, which is this thing called social jet lag. So I think another reason why night owls might have worse health outcomes is because of this thing called social jet lag. And actually, to quote the circadian biologist Till Roneberg, who came up with this phrase, social jet lag, the more of it you have, the fatter, dumber, grumpier and sicker you'll be. Because what social jet lag is where your sleep and wake times differ between weekdays and weekends. Because if you're a night owl, and you're having to get up early all throughout the week, you're probably cutting short your sleep on those weekdays because you're not kind of naturally disposed to feel sleepy until quite late in the evenings. So you're getting short sleep on weekdays. And then on weekends, you're sleeping in to make up for that. So there's this difference between your kind of sleep and wake times on weekdays and those sleep and wake times on weekends. And you're effectively moving time zones when you do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, there's so many themes I want to pick up on. I guess on social jet lag, we see this in medicine a lot, that certain things get triggered by lie-ins at the weekend. So it's very well known that migraines are often triggered by lying in at the weekends. And once you start to understand circadian biology, you start to now put together some mechanisms as to why that might happen. So people are always told to get up at the weekend at the same time as on the weekday, as a strategy maybe to prevent a migraine at the weekends, which is super fascinating.
I didn't know that, but certainly psychiatric episodes have been shown to be associated with jet lag. So,
but doesn't that all support just how strong and robust our circadian biology is, and how messing around with it can have unforeseen implications?
Yes, I think it does. We were just talking about how social jet lag is literally like real jet lag, that you're kind of shifting time zones, twice a week between the weekdays and weekends. Your body clocks will adapt, but actually what's increasingly becoming evident is that we now know we have these clocks in all our tissues. It's not just a kind of single clock in the brain. You've got them everywhere in your heart cells, your liver cells, your fat cells even have these clocks. And they don't all adjust at exactly the same rate. So if you change time zones, either by traveling abroad or by shifting your sleep-wake times, you're dragging all of those clocks along to a new time zone, but they don't all move at the same time. So what you get is this kind of circadian desynchrony spreading throughout the body, where these clocks start to be out of time with each other, and eventually they will all get back in time with each other. But in the meantime, you have this kind of, the way I see the body and these circadian clocks working in the body is a bit like a factory assembly line. To do something simple like digest a meal, it requires coordination between quite a lot of different organs and tissues. You've got your gut cells, you've got your liver, you've got your fat cells, you've got your pancreas that produces insulin. So you need this kind of coordinated talk between these different organs. And just like in a factory production line, if things start getting out of time with each other, you get a less efficient manufacturing process and a less good product. It's the same with our health, I think.
I think people who've traveled over multiple time zones will recognize that even if you start to adjust to the new sleep time, your gut, your digestion, things aren't quite right. So some of it's left behind on your old clock still, or it takes a bit longer. And, you can have this sensation that I've certainly felt sometimes when you eat in your new time zone out of sync with what your body's clock is telling you is the right thing. And the next morning you can actually feel hungover. And you've not drunk any alcohol, but you feel hungover because everything's just slightly out of sync.
Yeah, and I definitely get that. That's one of the worst things I find about jet lag is that kind of digestive problems. But actually, food is another thing. So light affects the timing of our clock and causes our clocks to change time. But actually, the timing of when we eat also affects the timing of some of those clocks in some of those tissues. So ideally, we want to be kind of syncing our light exposure and our eating patterns with, we want to be basically getting up, eating, and then when it gets dark, stopping eating. I mean, that's the way we evolved. And I think if you're kind of eating later, there's evidence that if you eat later, you're more prone to put on weight, even though you're eating exactly the same meal. I think really what we want is regularity, both in our light exposure, but also in our meal times and our exercise. So there's some evidence now that exercise also affects the timing of those clocks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very clear light does. Food is known to impact the circadian clock. And I think we're going to find more and more things are. And I think this really, for me, it really highlights why I think humans, so certainly if I talk about myself and my experience with patients, when you have a routine that's roughly, pretty similar from day to day, you just feel better. When your sleep times are regular, when your meal times are regular, even Monday to Friday, and you maintain that at the weekend. I mean, some people may listen and go, well, what sort of life is that? People might think that's a boring, dull life. I don't know whether it's my age or not. I love regularity and routine. I love being able to go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, eat roughly at the same time. And, Sachin Panda, who you've, I think, quoted a couple of times in your book, he's been on the podcast. He's done incredible research to show that the timing of our meals certainly has huge importance, arguably could be as important as what you eat. I mean, I think the jury is still out on that, but it's pretty powerful that just changing the timing of your meals can impact your weight, your immune system, and your circadian clock.
Yeah. And I think so while I was writing this book, I made quite a few changes to my lifestyle, starting with light, really. And we can talk about my experiment.
I would love to talk about that. It sounds like the sort of wacky experiment that I would do with my kids. Like, right, kids, Daddy's got a new plan today. Like, what is it this time? So, but we will go into that in just a second.
I'll tell you about that in a minute. But so the first kind of changes I made was to do with my light exposure. But then I got more and more interested in this idea of social jet lag and also the meal timing. And I mean, just in the last year, I've been recording a podcast for the BBC, which involves having to get up one day a week really, really early to go to London. And I just started going, this is, I know from all my research that this is bad for me, but I really, really feel it because one day a week I'm having to get up at 6 a.m. rather than 7:30 when I normally do. And the next day I feel like I have jet lag. And so now I've realized that if I'm going to keep going to London or having, some days where I have to get up early, it makes sense to always try and get up a bit early.
Yeah.
Once you do that and once you establish that regularity, you do feel better.
So why don't you've tantalizingly told the listeners and the viewers about this experiment that you did. So first of all, tell me, what was the experiment? And also, I'm really intrigued to know, when you came home one day with this idea and you thought you'd tell your husband, is it? Mm-hmm. And your kids about your new idea, what was the response?
Okay. Well, and this is relevant to this whole thing of, I don't want to go to bed early and it's really boring if I go to bed early because, a lot of us are like, well, I feel alert at night and I want to go out at night and see my friends and stuff. But after this experiment, I've kind of changed my view of this. So my idea was, what would happen if we go cold turkey on artificial light after dark? That was my original thing. I was just interested in what happens if we get rid of all this artificial light. And so I went and saw these sleep researchers at the University of Surrey and said, I'd like to do this experiment. Will you help me? And they said, yes. But what we'd like you to always also think about is to try and boost your daylight exposure, which is how I first came across all this research or emerging research about the importance of daylight. So we devised this experiment and we did it in the middle of winter, where I would turn off the lights in the house after. I wanted to do it when the sun went down, but that was kind of impractical because I wanted to carry on my work as normal. And I work on a computer, so I couldn't really.
And you're a journalist. And
I'm a journalist, and I'm a freelance journalist. So if I don't work, then I don't get paid. So it was impractical to do that, but that's kind of okay anyway, because if we evolved closer to the equator with a more kind of like 12-hour light dark exposure thing. We reasoned that wasn't such a terrible thing to do, to turn the lights out at 6. So the idea was that from 6 p.m. onwards, there would be no electric light and we would use candles instead. And then in the daytime, I would try, even though it was the middle of winter, I would try, and even though I'm bound to a desk in my work, I would do everything I could to get as much bright light exposure as possible. So that was things like, after the school drop off in the morning, just, sitting in the park with my notepad, doing my to-do list outside rather than at the kitchen table where it's really dark. And, going for a walk around the block, like I said earlier, at regular intervals, trying to eat outdoors. Also, just taking, when I made my breakfast in the morning, just going outside with my cup of tea and just, standing in the garden and eating my cup of tea and my bit of toast. And also swapping kind of indoor exercise. I did quite a lot of exercise, but swapping going to the gym in like a windowless exercise studio for doing the same kind of exercise outdoors. But I had to convince my family to also at least turn out the lights at night. And at the time, I think my kids were kind of 6 and 4. And my
not too bad. Still, you can exert you have some influence over them still at that age, I guess.
Well, I mean, I could say this is what we're doing and you're going to have to live with it. But my daughter's response was to burst into tears and say, oh, Mummy, it's going to be spooky. I don't like the dark. And I kind of said, oh, no, it'll be lovely. We go camping quite a lot. It'll be just like going camping, like having fires and candles. And she wasn't completely convinced. My son, who's really into Halloween, at first was like, this will be great. And he also said, if it's like camping, can we have lots of marshmallows? So I did a lot of bribing with marshmallows. But actually, by the end of living like this, we did this on off for 6 weeks in the middle of December. It was beginning of December until mid-January. And by the end of it, it was my 6-year-old daughter who was the one who was saying, I really like it. It's really cozy and nice in the evening to have the lights dimmed. And it was my son who was complaining that he couldn't see his toys and he wanted to watch telly. But it actually was a very positive experience for us.
What was the impact of doing this? So, for you and your husband, sure, but also I'm interested with your kids. Did you notice anything different? Was their mood different? Energy? Were they sleeping better? I mean, what went on with the family?
I was the only one who actually I did a load of tests on myself.
So you objectively tracked your data.
I tracked my data. I didn't track my family's data because it was just too complicated. And my kids go to school and it's difficult to control all that stuff. But I tracked myself very, very extensively. So the impact on me was that, first of all, I felt sleepier earlier in the evening. It was December. It was the run up to Christmas, which is a really sociable time. So we did have quite a lot of guests coming to our house. I think in part out of curiosity to find out what on earth I was doing and what it was like to live with candles. But, I was definitely sleepier earlier in the evenings. I wanted to go to bed like at sort of 9, 10 o'clock rather than 11 or 12 o'clock. I didn't always do that because of social obligations, but I wanted to. We also, once a week, we took readings of my melatonin. Now, melatonin is a hormone that you release. It's under the control of the circadian clock, and you release it in the evening at night. And it's basically a kind of biological signal to your whole body that it's time to shift change into night mode. And one thing it does is it impacts on the sleep centers. So it does tend to, you release melatonin and your brain kind of goes, nighttime, it's time to feel sleepy. Here's some sleep signals. And what we found was that I started secreting melatonin between 1.5 and 2 hours earlier than when I lived normally. So that explains why I was feeling sleepier earlier, because my body was saying, it's nighttime.
But this is
2 hours earlier.
I mean, for people listening, I just want to emphasize how striking a point you just made. We're talking about a very important hormone in our body. Yes, it's associated with sleep. There are other studies suggesting it's an antioxidant, that it may have some anti-cancer properties, potentially. And, we can maybe explore that later in our conversation, but this is an important hormone that is under this circadian clock that simply by switching off artificial light in the evening, you are shifting maybe 2 hours beforehand. You're changing an important hormone's secretion by 2 hours.
Yes.
That is significant. If a drug was doing that, we'd be talking about it. There would be a list of side effects on it. Yet many of us are doing that every evening on our devices without the awareness of the implications.
Mm-hmm. But the other thing is that I did some weeks where I was turning off the lights in the evening. We did a week where I both turned the lights off and got outdoors more. And we did a week where I didn't worry about my light exposure in the evening. I just got outdoors more in the daytime. And on that week as well, we saw this shift towards earlier melatonin secretion.
So are you saying that even if you didn't, you can mitigate the impact of your sort of artificial light exposure in the evenings by getting more daylight in the day?
Yeah, well, you can shift your clock earlier by getting more daylight in the day. But that German study you mentioned earlier about if you expose people to bright light in the morning, that improves their alertness throughout the day. That also showed that it mitigated the effect of bright light at night on circadian rhythms. So usually if you see bright light at night, it will shift your clocks later. If you see bright light in the daytime, it seems to stop, even if you're exposed to bright light at night, it seems to stop that shift. It's almost like your body locks on to the brightest sort of source of light it sees in that 24-hour cycle and uses that to kind of set its timing.
And that is, for me, that's like I've seen some of this research, and I think that is something that people should really be taking hold of and going, okay, look, trying to get people to reduce their screen exposure in the evening can often be very challenging. God, I know that myself. It's extremely challenging on a regular basis to do that. Now, at least by getting more natural light exposure in the day, you are actually potentially insulating yourself from some of the implications of being on your screens in the evening. So people can almost, how can I put it, have their cake and eat it, right? If they get outside more.
Yes, I think so. But I think you still ideally want to. You don't have to switch off your screens, but you can dim your screens. You can tune out some of the blue light or blue wavelength light, which our circadian system seems to be particularly responsive to. And you can do simple things like, you don't have to get rid of screens and go back to the dark ages and just have candles in your house. You can, just switch off your overhead lights and just switch to like dim table lamps around your home as well. That's going to dim your light exposure. And then if you're combining that with more daylight, then that's going to be better.
Yeah. What did you do? I'm intrigued because, we actually try and do some of these things in our house. The more I read about light, the more I get quite particular on it in the evening. So I don't want these lights from the ceiling on. I just want either candles or dim lights on. But our bathroom has got these big bright LED lights in.
Yeah.
And so obviously it's sort of summary time at the moment. So I tell the kids, you don't need the light on in the bathroom when you're going. But what did you do at night in the bathrooms?
Well, I'm really annoyed about our bathroom lights actually, because when we moved into our house 5 years ago, we got these dimmable bathroom lights. And they were great because we've got the LED bulbs in the ceiling and you could pull the cord and it would dim them right down. So that's great. But then there was some problem with them. And our electricians basically said, sorry, we can't sort out the dimmer. And now the only thing we have in our bathroom is bright lights. And that's a problem. So I now have this little night light that I use when I go to the bathroom at night. I just put on this little, you just shake it and it comes on. And it's just a dim light in the bathroom so you can see, but it's not this really bright, glaring thing. When I was doing my experiment, I think I used candles, which is a bit of a health hazard or fire hazard.
Nice,
yeah.
We say that, and I guess it is. Before the advent of artificial light, I'm sure that's what people did, right?
Well, yes. Well, I was about to say, I went and stayed with an Amish family in Pennsylvania while I was doing the research for Chasing the Sun. And they have oil lamps in their bathrooms. So, the kind of old-fashioned paraffin lamps, that's what they tend to use.
There you go. Well, we're gonna go to that. Let's just close off your experiment. So you were noticing big changes.
Oh, yes. So I also I did these kind of mood and alertness questionnaires just before I went to bed each night and when I woke up in the morning. And the main thing I saw from that is that on the weeks when I was doing these interventions, like cutting out light and getting more daylight, I was waking up raring to go. I was waking up alert and my morning mood was much better. But then the impact on the rest of my family. So we didn't track them in as much detail, but definitely my husband commented on how nice it was in the evenings and how he just felt more relaxed. My daughter at the end of this whole ordeal was, saying, I really like it. It's really relaxed. People who came to our house to visit, in fact, we had a New Year's Eve party in the dark. And apart from, nearly giving our guests food poisoning because we couldn't see if we'd cooked the beef burgers and nearly chopping my finger off. Apart from those things which, living with candles are problems. They also commented, we had some friends who'd been at another party first and then they came to our house and they said, wow, it's really chilled out here in a really good way.
Yeah.
People behave differently when the lights are low, I think. And the other thing on that New Year's Eve party that everyone commented on was we had quite a lot of people over. And so we've all got young children. So a lot of people put their kids to bed upstairs in our house. And, usually you've got kids. If you try and put like a load of sort of 3 to 8 year olds to bed en masse in a room,
they're not asleep 3 hours later.
They'll still be up at midnight. But they were, I kid you not, they were all asleep by 9 o'clock.
You know what? It is so interesting to hear that, because I really do feel that light influences, it exerts such an influence on the way we are, our moods, our sleep levels, our alertness. So much is influenced by light. And I just don't think we've taken it seriously enough. I remember coming across some of this research a few years ago when my kids were young. My kids would always get up super early, and they always wanted a nightlight on in the hall or in their room, which was a white nightlight. And a few years ago when I was researching this, and I came across that red light has less of an impact on our circadian rhythms than white lights or blue lights. And so I thought, okay, fine. So I bought a red bulb and put that as our night lights. And I'm not kidding you, instantaneously. And again, this is not a scientific experiment. This is just my experience of this. My kids were sleeping an hour later every morning consistently. And I thought, so in my head, I was thinking, this is not a coincidence. Their night light has changed from white to red. And it felt as though it was no longer altering their circadian rhythms. They were sleeping for longer. And, it's just something. It's interesting to reflect on that and then hear the story about when you don't have artificial light in the evening, you put all these kids together en masse and they all fall asleep. It really makes me reflect on, have we missed over the last 20, 30 years in all our discussions on health, have we missed a big part, a big piece in the jigsaw? Could our exposure to light potentially be more important than the food that we eat?
I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but I think certainly it's been underappreciated. And also, it's really worth just reflecting on the fact that, we take light at night for granted. It's only 140 years since Thomas Edison invented the incandescent light bulb. Before that, we had gas lights for, a few decades before that. But, it was in the early 1800s and that's only just over 200 years ago that light in the evening was a thing. Before then, all we had were like tallow candles or whale oil lamps, which most people couldn't afford, or firelight. And so most people went to bed not long after the sun went down. They stayed up a little while around fires and so on, but they didn't have artificial light. And our biology is set up for there to be darkness at night.
It's amazing to hear how malleable our body clocks are, because you made the change and experiment with your own family and you're suddenly feeling sleepier than you normally are. When my wife started wearing these blue light blocking glasses that I got her in the evening, so even if she went on her laptop and she put her blue light blocking glasses on, I think for a week at 7 p.m, by 7:30, she was yawning her head off and thinking, and normally she could stay up till 10, 10:30.
Yeah.
And so suddenly by blocking light exposure, you're almost allowing your body to return to its natural rhythm. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying this conversation, there's loads more like it on my channel. Please do press subscribe and hit that bell. Now, back to the conversation. It's important to declare an end to the day, even when you haven't completed everything. I think that is such powerful advice. And I wonder if you could sort of explain what exactly you mean by that and how that can help people.
Yes, it's really amazing that declaring an end to the day is one of my favorite microsteps right now, because the truth is that the vast majority of people do not have an end to their day.
Yeah.
We could all stay answering emails, handling things through the night. So we need to declare it. And I believe in rituals. So I believe in a little ritual. And my ritual is turning off my phone and charging it outside my room. In fact, Thrive has launched only one product, and we're selling it at cost because we're selling it to help people change habits rather than as a profit-making exercise. It's a little bed. It's phone charging a little bed with a blanket, and you can trap it under the blanket, tuck them in, say good night. I'm going to send you one, Rangan, as a gift.
Thank
because
you.
it's actually great for your kids. Your kids are 9 and 7, right?
Yeah, 10 and 7 now, yeah.
And they probably don't have phones yet.
They don't, and this is something that, well, they know what Daddy stands for and what he writes about in his books, but for me, there's a conflict between knowing what this technology can do, but not wanting my son or my daughter to be a social outcast in terms of what the rest of their friends are doing. And it's something I'm wrestling with myself, if I'm honest.
Well, I think, Rangan, just being able to set boundaries, like when you have your phone bed, teaching, for example, your son, that's where your phone sleeps. From the beginning, it's not a punishment. It's like the way we teach our kids to brush their teeth. We teach them phone hygiene. Because one of the biggest problems is that teenagers sleep with their phones. I mean, we all sleep with our phones. Unless we consciously choose not to sleep with their phones. That's the default position. So they sleep with their phones, and then in the middle of the night, they snap and they TikTok, and then they wake up exhausted, and that's the vicious cycle. So I think for me, that's why we actually called it the family phone bed, because we wanted it to be used by families. It has room for 10 phones to teach each other and support each other in building these good habits.
I think that's one of the best things I've ever heard. A phone bed. It's such a lovely concept, isn't it? And I like that idea that it's not a punishment. Your phone, your beloved phone, needs to rest. Here's a nice bed for it. I can't wait to see it. It sounds really, really cool, actually. You've obviously written an amazing book on sleep, and what are the habits that you do around your own sleep to make sure that you are getting as much as you need?
Well, the science is very clear that unless you have a genetic mutation, and that's interesting, some people who are listening may have a genetic mutation, 1 to 1.5% of the population does, and they don't need a lot of sleep. You can take a genetic test, or if you are conscious, you probably know if you have it or not. I know I don't have it. If I get 4 hours, I'm like a zombie. I need 8 hours. People need somewhere between 7 and 9 to be fully recharged, to go through all the cycles. Think of it like a dishwasher. In my book on sleep, you can see that it's like you need to complete all the cycles. And the dishwasher is a good metaphor, because you wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to take the laundry out 15 minutes earlier because I'm in a hurry. Well, you're going to end up with wet and dirty laundry because you have not completed the cycles. And sleep is as important for the body as it is for the brain. It's the only time when we can clear the toxins from the brain. And that's why now there are all these findings about the connection between sleep deprivation and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. I absolutely agree that charging your phone outside the bedroom is It's like a keystone habit. If you get that right, the knock-on effect is quite significant. And I always say to people, look, don't beat yourself up. These things are designed to be addictive. It's not a failing on your part. If you have it next to your bed and you wake up at 3:00 to use the bathroom and you then look at it on your way back, that's not because you're weak. It's designed for you to touch it and play with it and do things. So I agree with you, keeping it outside of the bedroom. If I bring it into the bedroom, which I do sometimes still, I mostly don't, but I'm human, I'm tempted. I struggle. I can't get off the thing. In fact, my wife and I have a deal with each other, which is like we've got full permission to, tell the other one, leave that phone in the kitchen, leave it, it charges in the kitchen overnight, is basically how we try and do it.
Great. And that's fantastic to have like an accountability buddy. So you are each other's accountability buddy. And then no judgments. I mean, one of the things we tell the people we work with is, yes, we're not going to do it perfectly. No judgments. Let's just do it the next night.
Yeah, no, for sure. Arianna, I wanted to talk about your own mother, because I've heard you talk about her on multiple occasions and what an amazing influence she was on you. What would you say some of the key lessons that she taught you were?
So one of the key lessons was around failure. She used to say that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success. And so she really taught my sister and me to be very willing to take risks and to be willing to fail along the way. And that made a big difference in starting businesses or even launching books, because when you publish a book, you never know how it's going to be received. And a lot of people shy away from that. So I think that was a big, big lesson from her. Another one was her unconditional loving, which is, I think, the greatest gift we can give to our children, because it also empowered me to reach for whatever I wanted to achieve, knowing that if I didn't, she wouldn't love me any less.
Yeah, wonderful. And are those two lessons that you think you have managed to also pass on to your own children?
I often ask them, because I always have been judging myself against having an amazing mother, and they tell me I do. And my kids went through a lot of problems. My youngest daughter dealt with anorexia. My oldest daughter dealt with drugs. She's been sober for 8 years now. So it's not like it was a story of linear success, but we kind of, through everything we went together, I feel that they've become so much more resilient and loving towards others. And actually, my youngest daughter, who is a painter, she did art at Yale, and she's made her living by painting. Now has her first book coming out. I'll send it to you. It was kind of interesting. She was hit by a bike in New York 2.5 years ago and hit her head hard on the pavement and suffered from debilitating headaches and a lot of other medical problems as a result. And during that time, she had her own like a spiritual awakening. And so she wrote this book, which is an Audible original coming out in November, which was going to be called My Cosmic Quarrel with the Universe and Other Minor Matters, but now it's called The Map to the Unknown. But it was kind of interesting for her generation in her 20s, grappling with these big existential questions of God and the universe and meaning, plus chronic pain. And it was wonderful, and being very funny. I think sometimes using humor, even during difficult moments in our lives, is one of the best ways to get our messages across.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I look forward to reading your daughter's book. It sounds incredible. You mentioned she had a spiritual awakening, and I've often got the thought in my head as I spent a lot of time reading about you over the last few days, actually. And as I said, it's really been very enjoyable. There's so much out there. But often I've heard things like you mentioned Stoic philosophy, or you mentioned the Indian text, the Bhagavad Gita. And I've often thought, are you spiritual? How do you feel that these ancient texts and these ancient philosophies, how and can they help us in the modern 21st century?
Oh, 1,000%. In fact, the last piece I wrote in my newsletter, I'll send it to you, is about this, all of our spiritual quests. And I wrote a book in the 90s about it, which, don't worry, about 4 people read, so don't worry if you didn't read it, which was called The Fourth Instinct. And for me, if you think of the first 3 instincts, being survival, sex, and power, different biologists and psychologists give them different names, but these are the 3 acknowledged instincts. I think you can't understand human behavior without looking at what I call the 4th instinct, which is our instinct towards meaning and something larger than ourselves, which, if you want, is the spiritual instinct. And a lot of people have rejected it because they've rejected organized religion. But the instinct is an instinct. And organized religion is just one of thousands of manifestations. And ancient wisdom, whether it's in the Bhagavad Gita or the Tao in China or Zen in Japan or the Stoics, is just really many different ways to describe one universal truth, which is that we all have in us that place of wisdom, peace, and strength. And most of the time we are completely disconnected from it. And all these pauses that we are encouraging people to bring into their lives are about giving us opportunities to reconnect to that place, which is our birthright. We all have it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I'm in my early 40s. I find that, my mother was very religious. She would pray every day. I was surrounded by that at home. She's a Hindu, like a lot of Indian families are. But I would consider myself a bit more spiritual than religious. I feel there is got to be something greater than just me. There is. I very much value solitude. Actually, when you're talking about micro habits, I actually think one of the most important micro habits for anybody, anywhere in the world today, is solitude. And I think these phones are one of the reasons why, because for all their benefits, if you look at that thing first thing in the morning and you're looking at it until you go to bed, you don't have any time to yourself. Everything is external. Everything is reactive. And so I am always talking about solitude to my patients and to the public, say, how even 10 minutes, even 5 minutes of solitude a day where you're not on that device and you're not consuming something else, just allow your thoughts to come up. I mean, it's something I crave more and more. And I guard it very, very rigidly in my life. I wonder what your thoughts are on solitude, and do you take steps to make sure you get some each day?
Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right, first of all, about the phone being like the greatest enemy of solitude and reconnecting with ourselves. Because basically, those moments of solitude are competing with all the stimulation from our phone, and it's a hard competition. So we need, first of all, to understand the value of solitude. And that's why I think breaking it down into these 1 minute or 5 minute increments makes a big difference, because you are not asking for a big commitment. And for me, it's I start my day like that. I start my day with meditation, and then at night I always love to read something which has nothing to do with my work. A spiritual text. Listen, you come from such amazing culture. I spent time in India when I was 18. Studying comparative religion at Shantiniketan University outside Calcutta, and I love the country, the culture, the food, everything, but the wisdom. And when we do our work in India or in China, we try to connect everything we are saying with their ancient wisdom, because even if people are disconnected from it, something in their DNA resonates. So we've done, a whole series on Chinese ancient wisdom, for example, and the Tao, a video series that we incorporate in our app, and also invite people to tell their stories. A lot of modern people are actually still practicing different parts of their ancient traditions, but they don't speak about it as much.
Yeah. It's funny, and I'm sure you may, or maybe with your kids, maybe be familiar with this, but, my parents came over from India to the UK. And so, like many immigrant families, you have this, particularly in your teenage years, you have this real clash with trying to fit in with the culture around you versus the culture you have at home. And it's funny, this rich Indian, culture that has been there, I think I suppressed for years. I think I wouldn't allow it to come out and flourish in me because I wanted to be Western. I wanted to do what my friends were doing. But it's funny, as I sort of tap into myself as I get a little bit older, I'm really reconnecting with it. I'm reading the Gita at the moment. Actually, that's the book I read at the moment in the morning. And it's funny, you can often think that, what did these guys know? We're in a different world now. We've got technology, we're busy. But you know what? It's amazing how many of those truths ring true just as much today.
Oh, absolutely. And indeed, science is validating ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
And the Gita really described these 3 lives. I think it's like such a prophetic description. I don't know if you got to that passage, which is, the life of inertia, what we would call today the couch potato. And, there are still some people like that, but that's not the big problem. The second life is the life of business, extreme frenetic business, which is our modern life. And the third life is the life that we are aspiring to now, that we want to create. So it was just like beautifully expressed in the poetry of the Gita, but also completely validated by the latest neuroscience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's never been easier, has it, to get away from ourselves? And again, I don't want to blame phones for everything. I think there's so many incredible things that phones do. Of course, I want to make that clear. But at the same time, we never have to be uncomfortable anymore. Any moment of discomfort or having to sit with our own thoughts, we can numb that straight away. It doesn't have to be alcohol or cigarettes or anymore or sugar. It can be those things, but we can just pull out of our pocket our smartphone and distract ourselves for hours, can't we?
Absolutely. And it's something that we need to be very conscious about dealing with and setting boundaries. In the social dilemma, it shows how this is deliberate. This is not just accidental. That these phones come programmed with all the hooks all the neuroscientific hooks that make us addicted.
Yeah. I actually think it goes beyond our own health. I actually have been reflecting a lot recently about this idea that a human being cannot compete with one of these phones. I just don't feel, even your partner, right? This phone has been curated with your history, the things that you look at, with the algorithms. It just keeps pushing to you everything that you've positively consumed with a dopamine hit. How can your wife compete? How can your kids compete? It's actually an unfair battle. And I would go as far as to say, I think phones, or the unintentional use of our smartphones, is not just impacting our health, it's damaging our most important relationships.
I completely agree with you, completely agree. And the way you are describing it, it's like describing the most amazing mistress.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, sexually trained, incredibly intellectual. You could bring everything together, and knowing what are your buttons. It's not just like a generalized ideal mistress, but each person's ideal one. Yeah, that's a beautiful description. You should write a piece about that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I'm writing a few things down at the moment. It's just an idea that I can't throw from my brain. I just think I think it's super important. And one of my favorite things that is each night, and I don't know if you've got to this bit in my book yet, but it's the tea ritual that I do with my wife every night. And it's just 5 minutes. It's a commitment that we'll sit once the kids are in bed with a pot of mint tea, and we will literally, without devices, the commitment is just 5 minutes to catch up with each other. If it happens to be half an hour and 40 minutes, that's great. But if it's only 5 minutes, then that's enough. And that micro habit, when we do it, it results in a more intimate relationship, a closer, a more loving relationship. And when we don't do it, little niggles start to build up. And, both of us are so passionate about these micro habits, but I really just want to hammer home to people, they really make a difference. Even if you just choose one and stick to it.
Absolutely, I love it. Look at your book, underlined with stickies.
I'm very touched.
And I absolutely love also the tea ritual. Tea is another ritual, and I practice it a lot. This is actually one of the things that the Indians and the English have in common, right? The cup of tea that's supposed to solve all problems. There is something about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And again, it goes back to what you say, the ritualistic aspects. Of course, we could do that without a tea. We could just sit there. But there's something about the tea, the making of it, the pouring it out, right? And that's why, the Japanese have this 30 minutes to make a cup of tea, right? But that just shows how important it can be. And I think it brings a lot of intimacy and closeness. Arianna, as we come towards the end, I always like to leave people with practical type tips. I want hopefully some inspiration from the conversation, but I also want them to take away some practical things that they can start doing in their own life. Now, before we get to that, I again want to acknowledge you for the amazing work you continue to do. You quoted, I think it was in your interview with Oprah, maybe, which I heard at the weekends, because I love quotes and I have a few kicking around the house. I love a lot of the, I just love them because they really help you look at things in a slightly different way. And I've never heard that Rumi one that you shared with Oprah, I think. Live life as if it is rigged in your favor. That made me stop, press pause, and just think about, if you start applying that to everything in life, even when things aren't going well, and you just go, oh no, that's rigged for me, it's really, really powerful. I wonder if you could share why that's so powerful for you, and if there's any other quotes that you want to share with my audience.
Yeah, so Rhonda, this is my favorite quote precisely because when I look back on my life, there were so many things that didn't happen the way I wanted them. Some of them were heartbreaks. And when I look back, I think, oh my God, that was the best thing that could possibly have happened. I mean, I was in love with this man, for example, in England, who was an unbelievable writer. You can check him out, Bernard Levin. And we were together for 7 years, but he didn't want to have children. He only wanted to have cats. And I was clear I wanted to have children. So I ended up literally leaving England to basically leave this man because I didn't trust myself that I would be able to stay in London and not go back to him. So everything that happened in my life, really, my whole life in the States, my books, my children, the Huffington Post, Thrive Global, I happened because a man wouldn't marry me. Good to remember that when things go wrong. And for me, that's really what Rumi means in terms of live life as though everything is rigged in your favor, because you never know until you look back.
Yeah, that's wonderful, wonderful advice for all of us. Arianna, the podcast is called Feel Better, Live More. When we feel better in ourselves, we get more out of life. So in all your years of experience, both personally and professionally, can you leave my listeners, my viewers, with some really practical tips that they can think about applying into their own life immediately to improve the quality of their lives?
Absolutely. And it's back to Microsteps. So I would really want to leave you with 3 of my favorite Microsteps. We already mentioned one, which is pick a time at the end of your day that you declare the end of your day. Mark it by turning off your phone and charging it outside your room. And that also means this is the moment you stop consuming coronavirus news, which is essential if you're going to have a recharging night's sleep. The second favorite microstep is how you start your day. 60 seconds before you go to your phone. And those 60 seconds are key because that's the time to focus on your breath, remember what you're grateful for, set your intention for the day, something where you have agency over the rest of your day instead of being at the mercy of what's incoming. If you think of it, that's how most of us start the day. Like, what does the world want of me? Instead of what do I want from my day and from the world. And the third thing, something that you write about in your book as well, is the recognition that breath is our superpower. And we have to remember that throughout the day at different moments. You know, stress is unavoidable, cumulative stress is not. And if we can arrest the cycle of stress, we truly transform our health and our productivity. And, you know, you're a doctor. So when you say that how important it is to recognize that our behaviors trump our genetics, that is key, and stress is at the heart of that. And breath is, again, our superpower.
If you enjoyed that conversation, I think you are going to love the one that I had with Professor Tim Spector, all about foods. It's right there. So give it a click and let me know what you think.
If you snack a couple of hours before a meal, your metabolic response to that meal is poorer than if you didn't snack.
Okay, just say that again because I think that's really important.